I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different. But they ain't.
Please stop! I'm leaving tomorrow.
How'd you find us?
You can't stop this. I have to finish it.
There's a cost.
We could have killed you. Maybe you should have.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the All-Time Gaming Series. I'm Steve Cravens.
And I'm Andres Gallego, a.k.a. Galleghost.
And today we're covering Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2, which was released on June 19, 2020. So just to briefly summarize the plot a little bit, Ellie from the original Last of Us game sets off on a quest for revenge with a couple of her friends from Jackson, Wyoming, to head up to Seattle to take out a military faction that has, shall we say, plagued them in recent months. We'll keep it very brief here because we are going to get into some serious spoilers going forward, but that is the brief gist of it. She's on a quest for revenge, and a couple of her friends come along with her to kill some people in Seattle. So that is the general gist of it. Already, it's been one of the most divisive and controversial games I've ever seen in, 25 years of gaming. I don't know how many years I've been gaming, but I've never seen a game come out like this that's just completely torn apart the fan base and just left everyone either pissed or confused or exhilarated or thrilled. I mean, there's so many different reactions to this game. It's just, it's wild. So I guess we'll get into it right away. When Naughty Dog came out with the announcement The Last of Us Part 2 was in development, what were your initial thoughts?
It was just only a matter of time for me. Like, it was the way that first game ended. It ended in a way where if you didn't have a sequel, you'd have been okay. But you just knew that there, with all the threads that they left open at the end of that first game, that there was no way that they weren't going to go back and just dig up the well of story that was left there to begin with. Like, I was simultaneously relieved, excited, and then after I saw that first trailer, I just kind of ignored everything that came out, and I just wanted to be fully surprised when I actually did play it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it got announced, it did catch me a little by surprise because the first one was not a game where you, as soon as it was over, you're like, oh man, I can't wait to play a second one. Because even though it was open-ended, more or less, it wasn't begging for a sequel like, the Uncharted games, where as soon as you're done with one, you want to play the next installment right away. That said, even though I was surprised, I was pleasantly surprised by the announcement because the first game was such a classic. It was an instant classic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's one of those games where as soon as you're done with it, even when you're like halfway through it, you're playing a seminal game in gaming history. The story and the characters, everything like that. So, it's one of those things that none of us really asked for. But as soon as it was announced, I think we were all, ecstatic because, the possibilities of where they could take the story were they were limitless, really. They were limitless. And, I know it got delayed. It was supposed to come out earlier this year, and then because of the pandemic going on, it got delayed, and there were leaks and all that other stuff. I mean, so the release for the game did not go as smoothly as Naughty Dog had hoped, nowhere near as well as they had hoped.
Nowhere near as they hoped, but it was still a massively successful game. It is the highest and the fastest selling PS4 game ever released.
Yeah. Yeah.
It beat out Spider. It beat out Spider-Man 2018. Plus, also it beat out Red Dead Redemption as well too. So, I mean, people can say like the reception has been mixed, but this game has sold gangbusters, and that's a testament to how good that original game was, and how much of a craving there was for people to actually see the story of Joel and Ellie told later on, a couple of years later, and then also telling that same story, but with next-gen graphics as well too.
Oh yeah, no, and also, I mean, let's be real. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now.
Yeah,
there's a pandemic in the game. I can't tell you how many times in the game I saw signs saying, "Please wash your hands," and social, wear a mask. So I'm sure that the game reflecting that bit of reality, that they might have thought that might have backfired. Like people wouldn't be in the mood for a game like that. No, if anything, it just stoked their interest to play it. So what do you say we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the game and dive into some spoilers?
Yeah, all right, let's get right into it. I mean, first thing off the bat, I mean, what was your initial reaction to the script and the screenplay and the story to the game?
Surprise. Again, I had heard the negative reception. I didn't know anything about the specifics. Having beaten the game, the story went in directions that I never anticipated.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess I'll just come out right out and say this. I was very surprised that they killed off Joel so early. Neil Druckmann, the director, he said that, that if The Last of Us Part 1 was going to be, its theme was love, essentially Joel's unconditional love for Ellie, and then Ellie eventually returning that unconditional love for Joel, that this game's theme was going to be hate. And the game's going to be much darker and much more brutal, and it is. It's a very oppressive experience, a very, very depressing story. It's a very heavy. It's just I don't want to put too many negative spins on it, because it was an excellent game, but it was a very taxing experience playing that game. The story was very draining. There were very brief moments of levity. The brutal murder of Joel took me by surprise. I didn't expect it. I truly thought that he was going to go on the journey with Ellie. Again, never read the spoilers or anything like that. So that threw me for a loop immediately. I mean, we're going to talk about this anyway, but playing as Abby also kind of took me by surprise as well. I didn't expect that. I thought I was just going to be playing as Ellie the entire time, but obviously I was mistaken. What about you? When you're playing it, we all have that experience when we first play a game. We're just kind of going along for the ride. We're not too busy trying to see too far ahead into what they're going to do with the story. And yet, like you said, this game kind of really it's like a sledgehammer to the face. It hits you immediately and surprises you immediately. What are your thoughts on the way the story panned out?
My thoughts on the way the story panned out is that there were several really brilliant moments. I mean, in terms of just how they started off the game, keeping you off your toes and just pulling the rug out from under you and seeing exactly what this type of world and what this type of environment does to people, and in the long term, and how this type of pain affects people. It was brilliant. It was utterly brilliant at points. However, I will say, as much as I have to praise the story and how much they had me on the edge of my seat the entire time, there were a couple moments that I thought were a little shaky and that needed more breath to it, if that makes any sense. Like, I kind of felt there were certain things with Ellie's story that if it was just a full game of nothing but Ellie, I think it would have clarified certain things, and vice versa as well too. With Abby in particular, I felt that we needed more time with her in order to really kind of feel as much as we did when we lost certain characters, in the same way that in the first game, Joel's girlfriend, when she dies, we felt something because you could feel that instant connection between Joel and her and the plight to get Ellie to the Fireflies. I felt that there was a little bit of a missed opportunity with that with Ellie, but as far as the script and as far as the writing and as far as everything in terms of execution, it's top notch. Like, dare I even say this game is, oh man, I'm right on the tip with this, but dare I say this game is probably as cinematic, if not more cinematic, than some of the Metal Gear games, and that's a huge compliment for that game. I mean, not in terms of action, but in terms of the drama, in terms of just how they execute just the cutscenes and how much they get you involved with these characters. It's utterly fantastic. Like, I don't think you've seen a presentation nearly as good as this, or nearly done as well consistently all the way through.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty bold statement that it's just as cinematic as the Metal Gear Solid games.
And you know me, I love those games too.
Yeah. And again, we're not taking anything away from Metal Gear Solid, not at all. We're just simply saying that this game lives up to that level of storytelling. That's cinematic.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it exceeds it, but it's some of the best cinematic storytelling I've seen from a video game. Yeah, I mean, I would say since Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, there's been plenty of games that have come out in the years between Red Dead 2 and now. I mean, the games have become much more cinematic in the way they tell their stories. I mean, the voice acting has just gotten so incredibly good. The motion capture adds a lot to it. Game scripts, you know, have just been, you know, I mean, the quality of writing in games, dare I say it, equals and surpasses movies and TV shows.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they're allowed to play in a sandbox that movies and TV shows can't. And they're allowed to interact with their audience in ways that movies and shows can't. So yeah, I would agree with you that this game is just a masterpiece of cinematic storytelling, incredibly immersive. And I'll go ahead and say this. I'm not emotionally affected by games all that much.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I had an emotional reaction to a game on this level was probably the Shadow Moses section of Metal Gear Solid 4. I love talking about that. It's just, I mean, it's, to this day, I still get goosebumps just thinking about it. But the ending of this game, and a lot of moments in this game, really haunted me and have stuck with me. And I've thought about it ever since I've finished, I finished in the early morning hours of the 4th of July. I finished at 4 o'clock in the morning on July 4th. And, you know, it's just really, I had a hard time sleeping just because I was so moved by the experience and I was so in awe of what Naughty Dog was able to bring out of me in terms of my reactions to what the characters were doing to each other and the depths that they were willing to sink in order to get what they wanted. Yeah, I don't understand the hatred for the game. I know that there's always going to be critics, but I feel like a lot of the backlash against this game, because let's face it, there have been some harsh critics for whatever reason. I mean, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first game, it was known that Ellie was a lesbian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, it was definitely presented as so in the DLC, and also there are little hints all throughout the game where you kind of get that vibe. But, you know, people sometimes see through rose-colored glasses and they don't want to see certain things like that. And then all of a sudden, when this game comes out and it is a pivotal plot point, and it is the main arc for Ellie, and it's done so beautifully well. And I mean, in terms of even both games, and it really astounded me how much hate that got.
You know, and I really do think that, you know, gamers are not, the gaming community is not as progressive as I thought. And it's just a shame because, again, they're acting like this is coming out of nowhere. Like Ellie's sexuality was not hinted at in the first game. And people are like, you know, they're kind of throwing it in our face and not really leaving anything to the imagination. It's like, well, all due respect, that's Naughty Dog's decision. It's their characters. They can do with them as they please. If you don't like it, don't fucking play it. Don't fucking play it. If you don't like it, don't fucking play it. Yes, we can say that that's a main source of the criticism from the games. A lot of homophobic gamers. But at the end of the day, there are people who are criticizing the story, and obviously the big turning point being that Joel is not with you on the journey. Even though he's in a lot of flashbacks, he's in the beginning, and he's at the very end. So he is very much in the game, just not nowhere near as much as we thought he was going to be.
He's a looming presence in the game. I mean, even though we lose him very early on, you still feel that pain and that sense of loss that Ellie has had, that she's doing all this because of the fact that she wasn't able to have closure with Joel, because of the very last night that they met, they basically just had a massive falling out and had a fight. And that goes to the entire point of the game too, where it's about Ellie and her battle with her anger and her resentment, whether it be her resentment towards Joel for not telling her the truth about what happened all those years ago, or even the resentment that she held towards Abby for not being able to have that closure with Joel and killing him, and just even her resentment towards Tommy to a certain extent. Yes. Where at the very end, I mean, we'll talk about this later on, but even at the end, she's forced back into this world and back into that drive for revenge because of an unresolved issue and because of her unchecked rage. And that, I think, speaks to exactly what the theme of I was about to say the theme of the film, but what the theme of the game is, which is how pain can change people. So overall, what it sounds like is that we are in full agreement that this is actually a very brilliantly written script, and the fact that Naughty Dog actually managed to surpass themselves in certain aspects with the emotional storytelling, and then also try some, let's say, very risky story choices that people could fall on either end, but at the end of the day, it's a big topic of discussion. I think that's what we can take away more than anything else, is that Naughty Dog was not only not willing to just make just a typical sequel, but also make a thought-provoking and bold sequel. So I think that's where we fall.
They took chances. And obviously when you take chances, when you take risks, not all of them are going to pay off. Some of them are going to fall flat in their face. For me, all of the risks they took paid off. And their storytelling, decisions they, went with certain characters. I can't sing enough praises for them, because it really, again, we've seen the reaction this has gotten from gamers, and it hasn't all been pretty. But still, you gotta have brass balls to really do the things that they did, because these are some very beloved characters from the first game, and they said, "To hell with your emotions, to hell with your feelings. We're gonna do what we want. If you like it, great. If you don't, the hell with you." So kudos to Naughty Dog for making an incredible game, and for the story just being top notch and the screenplay being top notch.
Absolutely. So my other question to you would be, in terms of changing up things for the sequel, how do you feel that they changed up the landmarks and the landscapes in the sequel itself?
Yeah, I thought that, obviously with PlayStation 4, the graphics are going to be much improved from PlayStation 3. And that allowed for a lot more detail, a lot more complexity within the environments. I thought Seattle was a brilliantly rendered, brilliantly designed location for the game. Naughty Dog is actually, pretty famous for their, environments, their locations within a game. Going back to the Uncharted games, for example, when you go to a certain, country or a certain region of a country, you really feel like you're there. Uncharted 4, everything was just, it was almost tangible.
Yeah.
Like you could feel the environments from the screen, and this is no different. Last of Us Part 2 just takes that and runs with it. And Seattle was, just from the constant rain, the moisture, the greenery, how it is, even though it is a post-apocalyptic Seattle, there is a beauty to it in, just how run down it is, how empty it is, how overrun it is. And specifically when you start getting into the aquarium.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you see the inside of the aquarium and how depressing that is, how it's such dire condition. and there's like cracks in the floor and the ceilings, and you know the illumination coming through the lights within the empty tanks where the fish used to be. The gift shop with toys and that look worse for wear. It really puts you into the mind space of the characters, whoever they may be, whether it's Ellie, whether it's Abby, whoever it may be. Wherever you are in the story, you're always in their mindset. Even in certain scenes, when you go swimming, for example, or you're on the boat and you're going up against rough waves, you feel like you're drenched. Like you can see the waves, and it feels like you're really in it. And it's just, the attention to detail that Naughty Dog has put into this, all of their games, but specifically Last of Us 2, that's what really, in addition to the wonderful screenplay like we've been talking about, that's what really makes it a memorable experience for me personally, is just how real the environment feels, how real Seattle feels. Even when Abby's in the headquarters for the Wolves, which is, essentially CenturyLink Field where the Seattle Seahawks play, walking around there, I was like, I wonder how much, because I love, football. I'm a 49ers fan and I hate the Seahawks, but I've seen, the CenturyLink Field several times. I wonder how much detail they're going to have in this. And it was astounding.
Yeah.
Like they got every detail of that stadium down. To the seats, the club seating, the actual design of the overall
rafters.
Structure. The rafters, above and beyond for reaching for the reality of the location, and that really paid dividends. All the people they had working on it, all the money they spent on it, the research they must have done, it really paid off. Because again, there's a lot of games out there that have developers that might cut corners and not try to make it as immersive as Naughty Dog has. Maybe they don't have the budget for it, but Naughty Dog did have the budget for it, and they really just delivered an incredibly immersive, beautiful setting, both in Wyoming and once you get to Seattle, and then eventually to Santa Barbara.
Just the level of detail that they just even put in, just as even as non-diegetic story, it's so breathtaking.
Let's talk a little bit about how, because again, going back to Uncharted 4, for example, you go to different locations around the globe. And this one, you open up in a very bleak, snowy Wyoming. Obviously being surrounded by the infected, you're always on edge. But it's the locations as well, the levels that you're on. For example, when you are playing as Abby and you find out that she has an aversion to heights, and you're in that skyscraper. And you're like super high up there and you're looking down and all you see is a bunch of like fog swirling and a lot of mist, and you don't see the bottom, and
then that fog disappears.
And then you see everything that's below. And you can, even if you don't have a fear of heights, the game does such a good job of putting you into Abby's mindset that you do. Yeah, looking down, you kind of do get a little vertigo. So again, that was brilliant. Just another aspect of the game that really elevates it another level, because again, not many games have the budget that Naughty Dog had to work with for this game. Not many games are direct sequels to one of the most popular and enduring video games of all time. So I'm glad that Naughty Dog didn't take it for granted. They're like, no, we're gonna really go for broke here. We're gonna make a game that pushes the PlayStation 4 to what it's capable of doing. So yeah, I can't say enough about their decision to set the game in Seattle for the most part. Once you got to Santa Barbara, again, very incredibly atmospheric, incredibly foreboding once you get into that main compound where the militia are, and also the opening in Wyoming with the snow and the darkness. It's brilliant stuff. What else you want to talk about?
And then, well, real quick, the other location that I really enjoyed as well, too, that gave you another flavor was the Scars hideout on the island. And just even replicating that sort of apocalypto feel where the entire village is on fire and they're just armed with only axes and arrows, and seeing the wolves go up to them and basically slaughter them with all these military weapons. And it's a very brutal and it's a very haunting sequence. That's the other thing that we haven't talked about really, is how brutal this game is. It's probably the most brutal game I've ever played in my life.
It's up there. And I remember Druckmann said something to the effect of, we really want the violence in this game to stand out, and you want to feel the effects of the violence. You want it to linger. This isn't something where they want you to go up and shoot somebody in the head and then it's over. You don't think about it. When you think of violent games, when you think about brutal games over the years, very few of them have gone to the extent that Last of Us 2 does. In terms of just really kind of showing you violence for what it is. It's not something that's fun or funny or amusing or thrilling. It's something that is incredibly abrasive and something that's, incredibly, it is. It's very disturbing. And there's plenty of moments, if you want to talk about specifically, let's talk about that ending, where you finally do go to Santa Barbara and you do find Abby and Lev tied up on poles, being fed to seagulls, essentially. And you cut her down, and you're going to the shore, and there's 2 boats there. And then it's like, oh, you thought it was going to be over that easy, and then you fight with Ellie and Abby fight. And again, Naughty Dog, they're like, no, we're going to make you feel when you're drowning her. When you're holding her head underneath the water, we're going to make you tap square to really hold her head under the water. Every punch you deliver to her, you're going to hear the bone crunching against bone and the blood shooting out. And the ruthlessness of Ellie in that moment where she's prepared to cut Lev's throat open to get Abby to fight her. And there is a moment there where I really thought we were going to drown Abby.
Yeah.
And it didn't turn out that way. I guess Ellie's better angels prevailed on that day. But all the same, that ending is so stark and it's so bleak, and the violence just adds to that hopelessness, that vision of them tied up on the poles, and that incredibly gray, overcast sky with like the fog and the sound of the water in the background, and then the ruthless beat down. And the broken bones and the blood, everything like that. There's violence throughout the whole game. There's gruesomeness throughout the whole game. I think the final emotional punch, if you will, from that scene really kind of made every single, punch, kick land even harder, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, and the thing is that this is also the second fight scene that we see Abby and Ellie go into. Yes. Whereas with the first fight scene that they go into, you sort of feel like these two are at their prime. They're the strongest that they've ever been with one another. Like, you feel that brutality, and you also kind of feel a little scared of Ellie at that same point, just knowing exactly what you would do in that situation. If you were playing as Ellie, it's like, oh crap, she's using the Molotov cocktails, she's using all the bombs and all this other stuff, and you see how brutal she can get. And then you also see how brutal Abby can get with her fists and with her strength, which is 2 polar opposites. But then by the end of the game, you feel that all that has been stripped away from both of these people, and you feel that they're at their utter lowest, and all they have towards each other is that hate that is getting them through that. And then that final fight scene, you just feel so exhausted emotionally, and you just want to tell Ellie, let it go. You don't see how badly this is affecting you and everybody else around you. You kind of just want to tell her, just let go of that hate. You could also see how it affect Abby as well too. I mean, in terms of the flashbacks and in terms of just how you start off seeing her, and she looks relatively like just like a normal 19-year-old girl by that point, right? And then as you progress, and then when you see her later on in life, you just see that hatred has empowered her and motivated her to turn her body into a weapon itself, so that she would have no other reason not to be able to take on Joel and take on any man out there, and that her strength is probably the only thing that she has going for her right now. And it's something that I have not seen done in a game in a long time. It's just so very well done and very well put together, of just you feeling that these two are at the end of their ropes.
And also the first fight was more brutal in terms of just the amount of violence that is done, because, remember, Abby punches the shit out of Ellie to the point where she like snap breaks her nose. And she's prepared to stab Dina even though she's pregnant. And obviously it doesn't go down that way. But both fights are incredibly riveting, and you don't soon forget them after they're over. Especially the one we were just talking about, the very final one, because again, the game has come to a head, and you're absolutely right. By the time you're at the end of that fight, you're so exhausted, both emotionally and physically, that you're just like, hasn't she paid enough? Hasn't she suffered enough? So yeah, no, and I, actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and ask you this.
Yeah.
The game is essentially a revenge game. That is the plot. Ellie's getting her revenge on Abby for killing Joel. But then the game pulls a Metal Gear Solid 2 and lets us play as Abby. Kind of came out of nowhere, especially, since we didn't read any spoilers or anything like that. It's just kind of like, what the hell, we're playing as this woman now. And again, that's probably another source of controversy. But let me ask you this. You see what Abby does to Joel, and obviously you're with Ellie, you're pissed off, you're enraged, you want Abby to suffer as much as possible. Then the game puts you in her shoes and shows you what she's lost and shows you how hard her life is. And you see everything from her perspective, and you start to see why she killed Joel the way she did, where her hatred of Joel comes from. What did you think about that approach of showing you both sides of hatred and both sides of revenge? Because it didn't give you one side to it. It gave you both sides. And it became much more complex that way. Abby's not so two-dimensional anymore. She's very much a three-dimensional character. Do you like the fact that Naughty Dog went out of the way to show you Abby's side of the story and make you have empathy for her? Did you have empathy for her? Or should they have just made Ellie the only playable character and have Abby serve as the main protagonist going forward, as opposed to, making her character very gray? She's not bad, she's not good, she just simply is. What did you think?
Well, to be completely honest, after that moment where Abby kills Joel, there was no part of me that wanted to know anything about Abby. And having had that hatred towards Abby so seated in me, and I even felt it myself too when I was playing the game. I mean, when I was playing the first game, there was sort of like a little moment of regret every time when I had to kill another human. It's kind of like, shit, I don't want to have to do this, but this is the only way I'm going to survive this. Whereas Last of Us Part 2, with that opening, it puts you in a blood-drunk mood where you're just like, yeah, you know what? Fucking get rid of all these people. These wolves are probably just pieces of shit. And then when you see the other side of it, you see that not only are they not bloodthirsty killers as you possibly saw or you possibly assumed, but that they're actually just they're a flip side of what Ellie's life is in Jackson. And it's just one of those things where you just realize at the end of the day, it's a cycle of pain, and it's a cycle that has to break. And no matter what happens, people and everybody else around you is going to be affected by that. And that also even goes to Abby's interactions with her friends as well, too, where you see they are basically there for each other through thick and thin. And then the moment Abby goes through with her plot of revenge against Joel, you feel that something has shaken up between her and her friends, that Mel doesn't want to talk to her anymore. Owen is just kind of over the wolves, and he wants to defect, and he wants to leave for Santa Barbara. Like, you kind of feel that plot of revenge for Abby has not only affected her, but it's also affected all the people around her in terms of just how they see her and how they've seen what a monster she's become when a daughter is basically begging for the life of her father to be spared, and Abby, just still tangled up in that hate, just takes a golf club and just whacks him to death. And it makes the game feel like it's operating completely on a shade of gray, and it shows you a brand new perspective. And I absolutely applaud Naughty Dog for doing that.
I agree with you. It would have been a lot easier just to make Abby a 2D villain. Mm-hmm. That her only sole purpose was to kill Joel and to be killed by Ellie. And, I can see why it would upset some people to go that direction. Yeah, I mean, it's all complexity. It's all gray. There's no easy answers. And I think that's what makes this game not only worth playing but worth discussing for years on end. Obviously, we're just one playthrough, and who knows? Maybe on a second playthrough in the future, we'll feel differently.
But talking about all these moments in the Last of Us games and in Last of Us Part 2, I mean, probably the biggest question I want to ask you is, what were some of your favorite standout moments from the game?
When you say favorite, I'm going to go ahead and say moments that really stuck out with me. Obviously, the murder of Joel. Not my favorite in terms of that I enjoyed it. My favorite in terms of it being incredibly powerful, incredibly shocking. It's hard to shock people these days, but that was very shocking, and it was very provocative. Again, the final fight scene on the beach the final, kind of everything kind of comes together, and the exhaustion of everything kind of piles up on these characters, and you as the gamer feel everything they feel. Absolutely brilliant. And like you mentioned before, one of the most apocalyptic scenes I've seen in any video game was indeed that scene where the wolves are going around destroying the Scars villages on the island. That was the imagery was indelible, with everything burning, riding the horse to escape, and dodging other people on horseback shooting at you. It's just it had this hellish atmosphere, like you were truly in hell. Again, I mean, playing that, it's kind of a shame because I wanted to savor that experience a little bit longer than I did, because the plot and kind of propels you forward at a very quick pace. By necessity, you're trying to get off that island, you're trying to get to the boat so you can get the hell off. So you don't really have too much time to kind of dilly-dally and kind of take in all the work that Naughty Dog put into making this scene as memorable as possible. But that said, it still stands out in my mind very clearly, and rivals anything in the first Last of Us.
Oh, yeah.
And then also, what I loved as well was when you, either as Ellie or as Abby, when you are in the aquarium. I love that because the aquarium is just a brilliant design. I mean, it provided such a sense of calm. It was kind of like a sanctuary, and it is indeed a sanctuary for the characters, away from all the violence and the terror in the outside world, either from the wolves, the Scars, or the infected. And the lighting, the color, everything just brought tranquility to me playing it, and it was a nice breather from the chaos that happens throughout the game. I mean, a generalization I could say is that anything in Seattle just absolutely blew my mind. And I think that if I had to pick one thing that I will remember the most, it is probably the apocalyptic ending where you're escaping to the Scars Island, and also the aquarium, just for how beautifully designed it is, and for that that feeling of comfort that you have, especially when you see it decked out in the Christmas lights, because they're trying to make it as homey as possible. I thought that was really, really well done. There's so many, honestly, man, I could tell you so many different aspects of the game, so many different moments that really I could say is my favorite. And one more that I absolutely loved was in the flashback scene with Ellie and Joel when they go to the museum. And they're in the what do you call it? The planetarium, I guess you'd say, like where they're seeing all the planets and everything like that. Yeah. And she goes into the little space pod, the astronaut space pod or whatever it was. It's space pod. And she fantasizes about being launched into space. And you can see the reflection of Earth as she's taken off in the glass, and I thought that was such a wonderful moment. You want to talk about escapism, you want to talk about fantasy. I mean, that was just such a great moment between those two characters. A very endearing moment, and again, a very rare moment of peace and joy for characters that otherwise just experience pain and terror and hate. So that's just on my end. What about you?
Oh, for me, there's a couple of them. I mean, apart from the ones that you've talked about, in terms of gameplay-wise, in terms of what some of my favorite moments playing the game was, in terms of the intensity, was the appearance of the Rat King.
Yeah.
Which the setup for that is just, it's so spine tingling at certain points. Like, you're in this dark part of the hospital that has been cordoned off since the start of the infection 2 decades previous, and has not been opened up since. But Abby has to go in order to get surgical tools. And you start reading all these notes from the people down there that they're like, well, we've been stuck inside of this place for nearly 3 days, and they keep piling in more and more people. It feels overcrowded. And the fact that you know that all these people are stuck with an infection that is like a fungi, and then you start hearing something travel along all the different sides of the hospital that you're in, and then once you turn on the power, and this fucking creature just comes out, and it's an utter abomination, because it's just all these bodies just put together in one place, and it's become this this giant morbid thing of death, and it's so terrifying. And the only thing you can do at certain points is just run. And then the more you start giving damage to it, the more it just peels off one more person, and then that person starts to chase you all around. It is something that's utterly terrifying and utterly morbid for a game. And I thought that sequence was so well done, and it was so terrifying and so creepy, and it just put me in an action mode type of thing playing that sequence of the game. But I love that sequence. But the other thing too is that someone said that a lot of your favorite moments in a movie or in a game are not necessarily the bigger moments, but you sort of remember the smaller, intimate moments sometimes. And for me, that is most definitely the scene where Ellie finds the guitar in the abandoned guitar shop with Dina. And just in terms of all that hatred that has been built up, and she's looking all around, she's trying to find a way to get to Abby over at the aquarium, and then she just finds a guitar over in the guitar shop. And then you just share this small moment between Dina and Ellie, and you see how much in love they're both with one another. And it's such a sweet and tender moment in a world that's just oppressive and violent. And also, that scene makes it more heartbreaking when you see that the only one connection that Ellie has to Joel is her playing the guitar. And then when you get to that final fight scene where Abby bites off Ellie's fingers off, and then she goes back home to Dina, who she left behind with a baby, and you see that they have left. But not only that, but that even Ellie's ability to play the guitar, which was her one link to Joel, her playing the guitar is completely gone. Like, this hatred has cost her literally everything in her life. And it's a small moment in the beginning that makes everything by the end feel so much more heartbreaking, in terms of just knowing that these two actually had a love and a connection with one another, and they shared something, and then it was just taken away, because at the end of the day, Ellie couldn't let things go, and she had to keep going on.
Yeah, it really shows you the toll that, revenge can take, not just on the person receiving the revenge, but on the person, extracting that revenge.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely one of the bleakest and most depressing endings of all time in video game history.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god, yeah. Like, after I was done playing that game, I pulled 2 all-nighters playing it, and then I was so depressed for a couple of days.
Yeah, it sticks with you, man. I mean, you go through all that, and for what? To be alone and to lose the connection. Seriously, to be alone and to lose the connection to the one guy who you did all of that for. So, was it worth it in the end? And who knows? If there is a Last of Us Part 3, which it sounds like they want to do, I hope they don't go the way of Lucasfilm and try to retcon anything. What's done is done. Stay the course. Do not try to appease gamers and do anything with Abby or Ellie or any other character. Don't try to, tidy anything up. Leave it messy. Leave it abrasive. Leave it provocative. Because that's what ultimately has made this game such a memorable experience. is the dedication to craft and the loving attention to detail, the incredible storytelling, and the willingness to kind of pull the rug out from under your audience and kick the door down and just kind of rattle their cages. And again, it's not safe, but it's memorable, and I love it for that. 100%, absolutely adore it for that.
Oh yeah, it's a roller coaster of an emotional experience playing that game.
For sure.
Yeah, but real quick, I wanted to ask you, what is your overall rating of the game?
To be honest with you, I give it a 9.5 out of 10.
That's pretty high indeed.
That's pretty. I'm not going to give it the 10 out of 10 that the original had. 10 out of 10s, man, for me, when it comes to video games, it's very, like, again, Metal Gear Solid 1 through 4, 10 out of 10. GTA 5, Red Dead 2, God of War, 10 out of 10. But that's it. There are little gripes that I had with it. Again, very, very small gripes. It's 9.5 out of 10. It's damn near perfect for me. But that's what I would give it. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10, just because there were a couple of character moments here and there. I felt some scenes dragged a little bit too much. Some of the quests, if you will, to gather supplies took a little bit too long, and it felt like a little bit of filler, specifically when you get to Seattle and you're first collecting supplies and you're trying to figure out where Abby could possibly be. I felt like that took a little bit too long, kind of dragging your feet a little bit.
Yeah.
But otherwise, damn near flawless game. And I absolutely, it's just, again, I mean, who knows, maybe on a second play, I will give it a 10 out of 10. Maybe it won't bother me as much now that I know where the game's going and I've played it before. But for right now, I give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's my second favorite game of the year behind Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh, okay.
What about you?
I mean, I would give it a straight 9 out of 10. I mean, it's not perfect. Some of the swings that they take were questionable at certain points, but I don't disparage Neil Druckmann or Naughty Dog for doing what they did. In fact, I applaud them for the swing, even if it didn't land entirely for me. But 9 times out of 10, the swings landed, but there were certain things that kind of kept me a little at arm's length in terms of the portrayal of Abby and in terms of what they decided to do with her character and what they had to say about that character in certain ways. It was a little messy, but overall, I think it was a really strong and a really bold move to show not only Ellie's side, but also to show you Abby's side, and to make you as the gamer complicit in that hatred as well.
100%.
So, yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic, and it's absolutely a must-play game. It's maybe my second favorite game so far this year as well, too. And yeah.
It's a great game. Again, like, I mean, 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, that's pretty damn high. I mean, it takes a lot to get a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
But this game it's well worth playing, and it's well worth discussing for sure. It's a worthy sequel to the original.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's all on my end, unless you have anything else.
No, go play this game, but I will give it the caveat: if you have not played the first one, play the first one before you play the second one. It is absolutely a worthwhile experience to experience both of these games back to back, and you are doing a disservice to yourself if you have not played one of the most influential and one of the most heartbreakingly brilliant, crafted, and well-written stories of any point in gaming. In fact, even just media in general.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because, yeah, I mean, anybody who thinks about playing this game before playing the original, just don't. It makes no sense. I mean, why don't you watch Godfather Part 2 before watching The Godfather while you're at it? So by all means, play the first game first. I mean, I don't know why you would tag along and watch this video if you haven't played the second one yet. If you have, congratulations, you ruined it for yourself. But brilliant game, 9.5 out of 10, one of my favorites of the year, I should say. And I'm sure by the end of this incredibly shitty year, it'll still be sitting there at number 2.
Yeah.
So that's all for me.
That's all for me, too.
All right, so thank you for watching the All-Time Gaming Series. This has been The Last of Us Part 2. I'm Steve Cravens.
I'm Andres Gallego, a.k.a. Galleghost.
And we'll see you next time. So enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching.
Take care.